Hey Buckaroos, welcome back to another lesson in Musicom Academy, how to become a radio PD, program director. This is going to be a lesson that's really leaning toward the jock side, but if you're a PD, these are things that you might want to be looking for, in the jocks that are working for you. But primarily this is for really sort of shooting directly at, if you're a new DJ, a new presenter, different parts of the world they call them presenters, a new jock on the radio. These are five things that will make you good, way better than you should be in a really short period of time. Five things as a new starting out jock, or even one who's been a jock for a while and just wants to get better, but five things that will make you better way quicker than you should be. I mean, something that would normally take maybe 5 or 6 years, you can probably pull it down to 1 year, and get to that level that fast. I know it sounds crazy, but you can do it. And I did it this way, and two other friends of mine, close friends that I grew up with, did it also. So let me just tell you that story just a second to add some credibility to what I'm about to tell you. I grew up in a town of about 20,000 people, really small town. There was 2 radio stations there, and only one of them stayed on 24 hours. Within 2 years of me starting to work full-time in radio, I was in New York City on the most listened to FM radio station in the United States on a major shift. 2 other of my friends who also started out doing the exact same 5 things that I'm about to tell you, they were in New York City also at major radio stations, WCBS FM for over a decade, as an example of one of the guys, within 5 years. All 3 of us worked at major radio stations all over North America in different places, and ultimately ended up with, which our goal was to be in New York City. All 3 of us from a town of 20,000 and minuscule radio stations. So you go, how's that happen? Well, these are the 5 things that I think got us there. So let's start with the first one, okay? The first one is air checking. Now you go like, well, everybody air checks. No, I'm talking about a totally different kind of air checking. We're young, we're kids, we're like 18, 19 years old. We know nothing about radio. We have an idea of where we want to go in radio. So the 3 of us would get together in air check sessions, and we would be brutal with each other. I mean, we would rip the crap out of each other. And one other thing, if you're doing an air check session, even today, don't do it for the show you just did on the same day or even the next day. Wait at least a week, ideally 2-3 weeks before you do an air check. And I'll tell you why. Because if you do it the same day or the next day, you're going to remember what you were thinking about when you said whatever you said. A week later, 2 weeks later, you're not going to remember. And you'll listen to the air check and go, wow, I don't even know what I'm talking about here. Because at the time, your mind was filling in things that never came out of your mouth. So all of a sudden, you really become the audience of the quality of what you're actually saying. But a lot of this has nothing to do with the quality of what you're saying. It has to do with how you're saying it, okay? And that's a huge part about being a jock and sounding professional and sounding really good. So back to the air checks. We would get together and we would play each other's air checks. So I'd say Mayan was playing. I'd play Mayan, and the other 2 guys are on me like blankets. Literally stuff that as a PD, this is important when you are a PD doing air checks with somebody. We said things to each other that no PD in his right mind would ever say to a jock working for them. We were brutal. It'd be stuff like, what the hell are you talking about here? This is stupid. You sound like a friggin' idiot. We would literally say that, but we didn't care because we were all friends. We were all trying to get better. So it was a safe environment. And that's really important for doing air checks as a PD, to create a very safe environment that the jock knows you as a PD is simply trying to make them better, and to up their game. Okay, so we had that going instinctively because we're all 3 friends. We had grown up together. We've been through it all together, and we're doing air checks. And we are nitpicking beyond what any rational person would ever nitpick about an air check. You know, we're picking out words. Why'd you use that word? Why didn't you use a different word? That word was sort of bland or blasé or stupid or goofy or, you know, are you an idiot? What were you thinking on this? That was the most dumb thing you could ever do. I mean, literally, that's the way the conversation went. So they would rip me apart, you know, and I'm thinking about what they say, you know, and taking it in, not taking 100% of it in as absolute, but I'm definitely running it over in my head. Like, oh yeah, but yeah, you know, they had a point there. Yeah, that was stupid. That was dumb. So I'm agreeing with a lot of it. And some things, it's like, well, you know what? I wanted to do this. Oh, okay. Well, all right. Well, it didn't work. Big thing. You know, you wanted to do something and they would acknowledge, well, great that you tried it, but that didn't work. Maybe you might want to try it in a different way. And perhaps on another show, I would try it a different way. So my advice to you is, if you're starting out, find another jock in your station, or 2 or 3, the more the better, and have air check sessions pretty regularly. I mean, we did them probably at least twice a week, sometimes more, because we wanted to get ahead. And, you know, don't hold back, not hurt anybody's feelings, just let it rip. I know that's not really done in this day and age. Now you kind of have to worry about people's feelings. We didn't worry about anybody's feelings because our feelings would have been hurt not getting where we wanted to go, not making the big time. That would have hurt our feelings way more than what any of our friends could have said to us. So that's number 1, air check sessions. Number 2 is doing production, but doing production on your own in a different way. And I really, really waded into this. I noticed really early on that when I would listen back to an air check, I was like, man, I don't sound at all a professional. I sort of sound like somebody who's kind of an amateur. And at first it was like, well, maybe it'll come to me. And then I started noticing national radio spots, you know, the ones that are done by super professionals who are getting, you know, big dough, like, you know, let's say a Chrysler spot or a Ford Motor spot or something, you know, for a car company or for Apple or for whatever. You know, the voiceover people, they're as good as you can get, and they're getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that. It's because they sound really professional and they have incredible control of their voice and their inflections, and to be able to hit words, you know, and say, you know, because in a session like that, somebody might say, hey, take that word there, I need you to hit it hard in the beginning, drag it out, and then end on an uptick on a word in the middle of a sentence. And you're like, whoa, that's pretty heavy duty. How do you do that? And anyway, so what I did was, and I would tell you to do this too, for sure, because man, it speeds up the quality of your speaking from, you know, maybe 5-6 years to kind of get this down. You know, you'll take it down to a year, 6 months, 7 months. I'd say it probably took me down to maybe 5 months, maybe. So what I did was, I took national spots like Coppertone and, you know, and the car companies and things that I thought were, wow, this is a really good spot. This guy is great doing this. And I transposed all the words. So all of a sudden now I have the copy. And I would either try to find music that was really similar to the music that was, you know, or the production that was behind the person doing the spot, if there was music, or luckily in that, you know, in that age, because, you know, I started in the radio ages ago, and then, you know, sort of in some of the beginning eras, a lot of times some of the spots right in the beginning, just as I was getting in the radio, then they stopped us, but they would actually send records, and, you know, the commercials were right on the record, and you'd put them on a turntable and dub them down onto a tape deck. You know, that sounds crazy to me even explaining that was the case. But along with the regular spot would be the music bed to the spot, same bed. Oh my God, it was awesome. So now you have the bed and you have the copy. And I would sit in that production studio, nobody's paying me, I'm just doing this on my own at night, because, you know, I'd go in maybe at 7 o'clock at night, you know, the night guy's on the air doing a show in the other control room, and I'm in the production room, and I'd be in there for 3, 4, 5 hours, you know, doing the spot over and over and over and over again. You know, I'd do the spot, I'd listen to it back, nah, that still sucks, I'd do it again, still sucks, do it again, still sucks, do it again, still sucks, do it again, tiny bit better, and so forth. And I did that for months and months and months. I can't stress how important it is for you to get a handle on inflection of words and be able to drag words out, punch words when you're talking, to pick your voice up as if you're singing. It's really almost identical to singing. There's some times where you need to sing loud, fast, and exciting and punchy, and even be able to, in the midst of that, I sort of learned how to tighten your vocal cords down to add excitement, as if there's almost as if there's an electronic limiter on your voice, but there's not. You're actually doing it yourself and making it tight, in your voice itself, and then loosen up and be relaxed, and you get a different sound. It's that type of stuff. I mean, it's high level stuff that takes you years to kind of get a handle of, if you can even get a handle of it, but you can do it really quickly in a production studio by doing what I was just describing. And now number 3, this was something that just sort of happened by accident. I had a friend who was in the business, and he got a hold of a manual at a radio station. And they had, this is what we expect at this radio station. A lot of stations used to do manuals for their jocks, and they were pretty thick. They'd maybe be, 30 pages. Do this after the jingle. Here's what we espouse. It's kind of almost like a brand Bible for jockeying. And one of the things in there was moving the 5 elements of a jock show around, continually moving them. And you go like, well, what does that mean? And now in a way, there's not really 5 elements. Really, when you listen to the radio, there's really 4 elements mainly. And one of them tends to now, where it wasn't then, tends to be sort of locked in the same place. But I'll go through them and I'll tell you what I mean by all of that. The 5 elements were your name, because you would say your name, the title of the song, the artist of the song, your call letters, and the time. Those were the 5 elements. Time, call letters, title, artist, and your name. And what this book said, and which we embraced, all 3 of us embraced big time, and it really matters, because when you have 5 things that you're moving around, you have 25 different iterations of the same thing. And it really helps you not sound boring, and it also helps you not sound repetitive, because you're continually moving these 5 elements around. And even though you might not be saying anything else, you might be doing the super basics. You're only literally saying those 5 things. But if you keep moving those 5 things around, in order to make a sentence out of those 5 things as you move them around, and I'm going to show you some examples on the screen here in just a second, because I'm going to move to the computer in the midst of this and go through a few of them and then come back to this live thing. But if I say, I want you to say your name first, then the title, then the artist of the song, and then I want you to do the call letters, and then I want you to say the time, you're going to have to structure a sentence to fit that in, to have it make sense in some way, and your wording is going to sort of go in a particular direction to put that together. If I say, I want you to do the time first, then I want you to do the call letters, and then the title, artist, and end on your name, you're going to have to do a totally different sentence. Now, I know nowadays for most radio stations, because that sort of came in somewhere in the end of the 80s, before it used to be call letters would be anywhere. You might come out of an extra and you'd start with the call letters. You might have the call letters at the end going into commercials. All 5 of these things are moving in any direction. Now, most radio stations want you to start with the call letter. So, an intro starts, you jump in, call letters, boom, and then you go. And most of the time now, the time is pretty much left out. Particularly if somebody is voice tracking and they're doing a whole bunch of stations at once, they don't really know where the voice track is going to be used or on what show, or they don't care, they're not paying attention, who knows where they're going to put it. And so they just cut the tracks, so there's no time. So all of a sudden, one of those elements is almost always instantly gone, and a lot of times nobody seems to say their name on the radio anymore, which I don't really get. I find that really bizarre. I find it really odd that if you actually want to become a star on the radio and matter, or you want your jocks to become stars on the radio and matter so that people care about them, why would you not have them say their name? Hardly anybody ever says their name anymore. You can go hours and never hear who the person is. There's no production, and they never say it. I find it incredibly stupid, super stupid. But that's a side note. I digress. Anyway, I'm going to go to computer in just a second and give you some examples of how you would take the 5 things, which in a small market you may be still doing the 5 things, and move them around. And even if call letters always comes first thing out of your mouth, you still have 3 other things left to move around. So even those 3 becomes 9. And if you're, let's just say you're talking, you open the mic 6 times an hour, well, you're not going to be repeating for an hour and a half. So you're not going to sound repetitive or boring just doing these super stupid basic things. You can sound way better just by moving these around and sound more professional. Number 4, all 3 of us did not want jobs. We wanted careers. And more specifically, we wanted to get to the big time. We did not just want to be jocks, in a tiny little town that we started out in. We didn't want to be jocks in Syracuse or Buffalo. Not that there's anything wrong with those towns, and you can make a great living there. Or Peoria, Illinois, or Lexington, Kentucky, or, Colorado Springs, Colorado. We didn't want to be jocks there. We wanted to be in New York, LA, Chicago, Detroit, Miami, Washington. We wanted to be in one of the top 10 markets in the country for our career, and we wanted to be in one of the top 5 radio stations in those markets. We wanted to hit the big time. If we were basketball players, we wanted to be in the NBA. If we were football, we wanted to be in the NFL. We did not want to be in a farm team. Okay, so that's a big one. And we committed to doing that. We committed to no holds barred. We will do whatever it takes. We would work whatever amount of hours it took. We committed to doing anything and everything that got us to a major market and a major radio station. So that was number 4, and that's a big one. Most people, especially in this day and age that I see, they won't do that. I mean, in the beginning when we first got in radio, and it's still the same, but it's way lesser extent because people think differently now, and I would say to you, it's totally wrong thinking. They don't want to move cities. Well, I grew up here, my friends are here, I don't want to leave. Yeah, well, you're also, let me put that in a different context. I grew up here, my friends here. I don't want to leave. I just ran out of places to work. There's none of these stations that want to hire me. Even though I have great skills, I'm screwed. As opposed to all of what I just said and go, hey, well, that station wants me, but it's in a different city. It's 600 miles away, and I'm going. I'm going to go there. I don't care. Because you know what? I don't have to go there the rest of my life. I'm just going to go there, maybe work a year, get that under my belt, get it on my resume, get better, mail out air checks, and move on and go somewhere else that I want to go. And maybe it's back to your hometown at a big station. And number 5, which was my personal one, I know we talked about it in sort of non-lockdown terms for the other 2 guys that that got to New York City just like me, and as I was describing. But for me, I can tell you exactly what mine was. When I started to work full-time, because I was doing radio part-time by accident, got into radio by accident when I was going to college for an accounting degree, of which I got the accounting degree and never ever used it. Never was an accountant, and I never was even a bookkeeper, although it came in handy, messing with the books when I became a GM and a VP of programming. Then for sure you need to understand accounting. But so I'm going to school, and I started doing radio part-time, and I did it for a couple years. And then, when I graduated, it was like, okay, you know what? I got a decision to make here. I am going to, just like number 4, I'm going to make radio my career. I'm going to go for it. Hell or high water, I'm taking the shot to go for this. But, and this is number 5, I put a hard ending on my life. I said 2 years, that's it. If I don't make the big time, what I described, top 10 market, top 5 radio station in that market, making good money and, and on my way, so I knew that, okay, I'm not fooling myself. If I didn't make it in 2 years, I was going to quit the business, maybe goof around, still working part-time in some place, but I would go be an accountant. 2 years. Cutter, what's that phrase? Cut or fish bait? No, fish or cut bait? How's that go? Yeah, fish or, yeah, that would make sense. Fish or cut bait. Basically, either do it or not do it. If it was Yoda, what is it, try or not try? Anyway, you get the idea. So hope these help. And I truly hope that you embrace them, maybe not all 5, but at least, some of them anyway. All right, so subscribe, hit the bell for, to get notified, all the usual stuff about YouTube channels if you like it, and I hope you're getting something out of it. Until the next lesson, see ya.